This presentation was made possible by Tarptano gathering all the necessary information. Consider this a history class, as I know what you're all thinking. I already know about Godzilla. You know about the Godzilla you all know in our day and age, but you don't know the history behind Godzilla. So I put together this presentation with all the information Tarptano gave me and made this for you all. So sit down, shut up, and listen. Also, please ignore any mispronunciations that I have on anybody's name or any of their names, as I still don't know how to pronounce them very well. And we move on. Precambrian to Permian period. Reports from the Shobijin indicate 3 entities safeguarded the budding life on Terra, aspects of land, sea, and sky, as life blossomed, eventually evolving into a myriad of forms ranging from microbes to natural kaiju. A catastrophe struck in the Permian period. This was recorded in the fossil record as the Great Dying, and resulted in over 95% of life on the planet extinguishing. The cause and resolution is still unknown, but an outcome was the 3 aspects were forced to fuse into a single body to halt it. They reforged the rampant radiation and corruption left by some invasion into a stream of energy fueled by life itself, a current of mana flowing through the planet. This mana stream influenced the evolution of various species. Late Cretaceous. 2 young planet-destroying dragons, named King Ghidorah and Destoroyah, arrives on Terra in an asteroid impact and begins feasting on the life force of the local lifeforms, causing the CT extinction that kills off a majority of the dinosaurs. Before they can finish off the rest of the planet's life, the planet's mana produces 2 protectors in the form of a prehistoric Mothra and Batra to fend the dragons off. The battle reawakens the then dormant original guardian, whom promptly put an end to the conflict. King Ghidorah is nearly killed and retreats into space, while Destoroyah is sealed away in the planet's core. The Guardian takes Mothra and Batra, as well as the ensuing incarnations that succeeded them, under its wing. 100,000 years before the present. The first civilizations arises. Comprised of multiple sentient species, many are now considered mythical, and the origin of man's fairy folk and yokai legends, such as the small Shobijin being the origins of the fairy legends. Using a mix of advanced science and magic, they peacefully reign over a large portion of the planet, mostly in now sunken landmasses, such as Zealandia. For both amusement and biodiversity, they revive many of the ancient beasts, long since extinct, to place them on isolated reserves. One revived species, a type of theropod dinosaur related to Ceratosaurus, would later be the ancestor of Godzilla. This is how numerous dinosaur-based kaiju eventually came to be, despite dinosaurs being absent in the fossil record since the Cretaceous. 77,000 years before the present. Terra's original and strongest guardian goes rogue and causes another mass extinction event, nearly eradicating all early humans on the planet, before it was stopped and sealed away under an unknown island by the last remaining adult Mothra and Batra, the rest of the flocks dying in the effort. As their last act before crumbling away, the first civilization created a series of guardian monsters through a mix of alchemy, magic, and lost scientific understanding to bolster the world's defenses and protect the future. They sealed their creations away in a deep slumber to be reawakened in 100,000 years to safeguard should the great evil release itself from its tomb. 5 of their known creations are logged in Japanese, Korean, and Filipino legends under certain aspects of the elements and color. Anguirus, fire and brown. Gamera, water and blue. Baragon, earth and red. Raiga, quintessence and green. And Yongari, metal and purple. Others include the force elemental Varan and an unnamed wind elemental based off of a pterosaur created by Amaterasu. The Atlanteans attempted to make a guardian beast of their own, but their attempt, the Gaius flock, backfired when their creations turned on them due to the process being incomplete and cursing the rapidly multiplying Gaius with an unending hunger that drove them insane. However, because the creation of these beings caused temporary damage to the world's already weakened life force, the mana stream and the source of all magic, it altered the world's weather patterns and helped exaggerate the coming ice ages. This damage to the biosphere and loss of magic to a majority of the world enraged Batra, who wiped the civilization's remnants off the map. He was only stopped short of killing the last humans and Fae on the planet by Mothra intervening and fighting him off. Batra was killed and laid to rest in the Northern Sea, sure to reincarnate again someday. Gravely wounded from the battle, Mothra traveled to one of the last enchanted lands on Terra, laying her egg on the later dubbed Infant Island. She too died from her wounds, the incident of the rogue guardian, and then Batra's rampages are recorded in the fossil record as the Toba Catastrophe. In the centuries that followed, magic became extremely scarce across Terra. Mythic creatures like dragons became normal beasts like crocodiles, with most Fae gradually becoming human over time, with only a rare few being born across the years to keep the old legends alive. 30,000 BC to 1800 AD. Occasionally, surviving Godzillasaurus would wander off from their homeland of Lagos Island and, guided by currents, ended up at Odo Island for a brief period of time in the fall. Due to this being hurricane season, many natives only got a fleeting look at the beasts they regarded as dragons or sea gods. The dinosaur would be offered sacrifices of fish or human victims, which the predator would find unpalatable and depart soon after. This created the myth the sea dragon Gojira had accepted their sacrifices and left them in peace. The myth carried on well into the modern day, even as the species became rarer and rarer. Occasional sightings of a truly gargantuan ancient alpha predator who survived the Permian extinction only bolsters the myth. 1030 AD. Arising from the depths, a sea dragon-like kaiju, an out-of-control creation by an extinct race, ravages the Ryukyu Kingdom on Okinawa Island. To save their people, the royals use a mix of mysticism from leftover First Civilization manuscripts and engineering to create a giant Shisa named King Caesar. Caesar successfully fends off the dragon before sealing himself away until a day he will be needed again. A manuscript detailing the legend of Caesar implies a human, an unnamed royal guardsman or soldier, sacrificed his life to put his soul into the giant golem. The name of this guard, however, is lost to history. 1630 AD. Archive reports gained from the Mysterians indicate Grand King Ghidorah attacked the Xenilian Empire in deep space at this time, causing an end to their era of peace and carving a path of destruction, all the way to their homeworld, for them and their Nebula M allies who tried to help, but the details of what exactly happened were censored by the next controller in the line, and the creation was sealed within an asteroid prison called Gorath. During the attacks, and before Ghidorah was fended off, however, an Exilian colony and mining vessel fled the planet. Losing communication and thinking themselves possibly the last of their kind, the several thousand on board set out for a new world away from King Ghidorah. They rechristened themselves the Mysterians. 1954. The first known modern kaiju, as you all know the name of, is Godzilla. Created from radioactive fallout from the H-bomb testings, mutating a dinosaur that was living near the Bikini Atoll. The monster blames humanity for its painful irradiation and goes on the offensive. It emerges and first attacks a rural village on Odo Island before swimming towards Japan. It goes on a revenge-fueled rampage, leveling Tokyo and killing thousands. Dr. Daisuke Serizawa uses his experimental device, the Oxygen Destroyer, to kill the monster, but decides to take his own life in the process to avoid his invention being fully used as a weapon ever again. Despite desires to reverse engineer the weapon, the attempt seems faulty given Serizawa burned all of his notes. 1957. Terra gets first contact when the Mysterians find their way to the world. After a botched first contact, the aliens invaded an isolated area in northern Japan. Thinking their homeworld destroyed by Ghidorah and having not enough fuel to go anywhere else, they desperately demand a piece of Terra to live on and try to force the humans out of the region. The aliens and their giant robot, Mogira, battle the Japanese and the US military, but are eventually defeated thanks to an earthquake disabling their underground base and crippling Mogira. It helped most of the Mysterians that they were not military, but random civilians and miners. Mogira, even originally being just a mining machine, they added a few weapons to, out of desperation. The remaining aliens surrender and integrate into society after much time and debate. Eventually, much of their technology is reverse engineered and causes an invention boom, giving rise to the eventual Maser tanks and Super X hovercraft series. To manage the Mysterians and to be on lookout as well as development of new weapons, Crisis Control Intelligence, or CCI, is formed. 1970s. With time, many of the Mysterians naturalize to Terran nations and completely integrate into society. Some even intermarry with humans, producing hybrid offspring with various traits exceeding both parents. Along with common traits such as slowed aging past 25 and immunity from many diseases, two distinct groups are found. Some, such as Ozaki Shinichi, have greatly enhanced reflexes and physical prowess. Another hybrid type develops psychic abilities such as telekinesis and telepathy, as is the case with Miki Segusa. 1983. A second, more powerful Godzilla arises in the Alaskan seas after being irradiated by a nuclear submarine crash, but goes unnoticed by man for years. Sensing a threat nearby, he approaches Atu Island in the midst of a hurricane. The kaiju is soon attacked by and fights three unknown entities near the island. While apparently victorious, Godzilla is low on energy and begins moving southward towards Japan's nuclear power plants to recharge. 1984. The new Godzilla reveals himself and attacks Japan, seeking nuclear power. Having access to plasma weaponry and an advanced assault plane called the Super X, reverse-engineered from the Mysterian technology, the military manages to briefly knock the weakened monster out. However, the chaos of the event nearly causes World War III, when an illegal Soviet nuclear missile satellite accidentally fires at the creature. The USA manages to shoot the missile down, but the fallout is absorbed by Godzilla. He revives and is supercharged, destroying the Super X and much of Tokyo. Lacking options and the Super X being destroyed, they instead lure Godzilla to a trap where he was sealed inside a volcano. Many psychic hybrid children, however, begin to have nightmares that Godzilla will return within a few years. Due to the attack, the UN forms G-Force as a Kaiju response unit should Godzilla or another monster emerge. They worked with CCI, but it's, begrudgingly at best, CCI became more and more corrupt. 1989. A genetically engineered rose has its cells spliced with Godzilla's, creating a plant-like kaiju called Biollante. Complicating matters is reports by Miki that the rose contained the spirit of a deceased scientist who is in agony at the situation. At the same time, an explosion at a volcano by a terrorist plot ends with Godzilla being released from the magma. Godzilla seeks out Biollante after sensing a creature like himself, but Biollante goes on the attack to keep him from the humans. Godzilla defeats and seemingly burns Biollante to ashes, but looks on mournfully at the prospect with a lonely expression. After the extended plan is conducted to try to weaken Godzilla with anti-nuclear bacteria, Biollante is revealed to have survived the mutation into a more powerful form. She arrives on scene to hold Godzilla off and let the plan work. Godzilla fights Biollante to a draw, and both survive. Biollante turns into spores and settles in the atmosphere, while Godzilla retreats to the ocean. 1991. Visitors from the future arrive and claim that in their timeline, Godzilla returned in 1991 and destroyed Japan. Using their time machine, several people travel back to the Pacific War era and see the dinosaur that will one day become the 1980s monster. Wrongingly thinking the 1984 and 1954 beasts were one and the same, they move the dinosaur to the Bering Sea to avoid it being hit by the H-bomb, and in a bid to keep the events of 1954 and 30 years later from happening. Their theory, however, turns out to be wrong, and history can't be changed, incidentally putting the dinosaur in the future path of the submarine crash that created him in the first place. This reveals to the world that the Godzilla that appeared in the 1980s was the second of its kind, the son of the 1950s individual. The future travelers, however, reveal their story was false, and that they only attempted to remove Godzilla from the equation because one confesses, one day he'll be your greatest defense. Thinking that they had indeed erased Godzilla from history due to him vanishing from undersea radar, the future travelers go about their plan to cripple Japan and unleash the monster upon it. The beast is a three-headed golden dragon based off of a creature logged in their history as King Ghidorah. Godzilla reveals himself to be unharmed, able to camouflage from the trackers, and fights the monster. He is victorious, but assumes humanity has turned the beast upon him, and goes on a rampage across Japan. Again. This is halted by the artificial Ghidorah being rebuilt in the future and sent back in time as a cyborg, Mecha Ghidorah. In the battle, Godzilla is carried far out to sea and goes into a coma, but Mecha Ghidorah is damaged beyond repair. 1992. A meteor impact reawakens both Godzilla and two ancient guardian creatures. The guardian of the Terra, Batra, with his fairy priestess, Belvera, and the guardian of mortals, Mothra, with her twin priestesses, Mole and Laura. At the same time, a dark presence possesses Godzilla, and drives him into attacking the pair in a bloodlust, despite having no quarrel with them. Initially, the two Guardians themselves are rivals, with Mothra and Godzilla going after both each other and Mothra, as the latter tried to keep the humans out of harm's way. In the end, though, Mothra and Mothra set aside their differences to drive Godzilla away, with Belvera joining her sisters in an enchantment song to empower their guardians. It is successful, but Mothra is killed in the effort. Mothra performs a sealing magic on Godzilla to free him of his possession, and the dinosaur permanently leaves her alone, not having any personal grudge against the Guardian. Belvera assumes the plan was done to get rid of Godzilla and purposely killed Mothra, leaving and swearing revenge. Mothra leaves Terra for space for a time to stop oncoming asteroids from impacting the planet in the near future. In deep space, Godzilla's cells, having been stuck on Mothra's claws from the fight, drift into a microscopic black hole. They fuse with a crystalline being and become a creature first called SpaceGodzilla, later dubbed Zanilla. Knowing of his origin, Zanilla begins flying towards Terra for unknown reasons. 1993. The UN uses salvaged parts of Mecha Ghidorah to have CCI make an anti-kaiju machine called Mechagodzilla with G-Force to pilot it. At the same time, a large egg is found alongside a mutant pteranodon, dubbed Redon. The egg is taken to a research institute in Kyoto, where it hatches into a baby of the same species as Godzilla. The man-sized youngster is soon found to be incredibly gentle, playful, and placid, the critter quickly befriending the local psychic children and sees his biologist caretaker, Azusa Gojo, as his mother. Azusa herself grows very attached to the youngster, having been the first thing the baby saw upon hatching, but is stressed due to constantly having to ward off research endeavors by her less scrupulous colleagues who want to exploit the dinosaur. This plays on her mind even more, with worry the baby would be exploited as it begins to become clear it's sapient. However, it's discovered that his species has a homing ability that allows others of his kind to find each other over long distance. The older Godzilla uses this ability to home in on the Institute, with the intent of taking the baby with him, while at the same time, Radon is trying to do the same thing. However, both are attacked by Mechagodzilla, whose pilots are trying to defend the city the baby was housed in. Radon sacrifices itself to power up Godzilla, who destroys the machine. Knowing why Godzilla arrived and aware she couldn't protect the infant dinosaur much longer, Azusa exchanges a tearful goodbye with the baby, before urging Miki to tell Godzilla to leave and take the infant with him. Miki does so, and Godzilla actually seems to understand, and the baby joins his new adoptive father. The two dinosaurs swim out to sea and leave the city damaged but intact. Afterwards, the baby is officially renamed Godzilla Junior and the adult Godzilla Senior. 1994. Godzilla Senior and now a 30-meter tall toddler, Godzilla Junior, are found living on an isolated radioactive isle named Birth Island. While Senior is still hostile towards humans, his temper had mellowed due to his adoptive son being so kind to them. Zanilla arrives on the landmass and imprisons Junior in a crystal barrier, not harming the being as he sees it as his little brother, but working to goad Godzilla Senior into fighting him. Miki reveals the Shobijin told her Zanilla specifically came to Terra to kill Godzilla, but doesn't care about what gets in his way. Zanilla sets up a crystal fortress in a nearby city, driving the humans out. However, before he can prepare for Senior's arrival, G-Force sends in their first homegrown mecha, built and upgraded from the remains of Mechagodzilla and based off the Mysterians machine, Mothra manages to prove to be a formidable foe for the space monster. After the mecha stalls Zanilla for several hours, Godzilla Sr. catches up and the two forces team up to defeat Zanilla. In the battle, however, Mothra suffers tremendous damage after gravely wounding Zanilla, effectively put out of commission for years. Before he can be killed, however, Zanilla retreats back into space under the cover of a massive explosion. Thought dead, he then spends several years on the far side of the moon to heal. G-Force Commander Aso grants CCI more and more freedom for research, seeing the surge of monsters as a threat to humanity's dominion of Terra. Unknown to any, especially kept secret given Biollante and Zanilla were both spawned by Godzilla's cells, CCI acquires G-cells of its own and begins large-scale testing at their Tokyo headquarters with no oversight by the UN or G-Force. 1995. Mass nuclear fallout from their uranium-rich island exploding further mutates both of its inhabitants. Senior enters a crazed, supercharged nuclear meltdown stage, and Junior is rapidly aged to his teenage years. This is a problem, as Senior's body can't contain his greatly increasing energy, and will soon destroy itself, possibly taking the entire world with him in a massive explosion. At the same time, Professor Kensaki Ijuin invents a new substance called micro-oxygen, but it's feared by some that he might have accidentally rediscovered Dr. Serizawa's oxygen destroyer. This proves prophetic in the worst way possible when a life form mutated from the oxygen destroyer is further enhanced when it absorbed the micro-oxygen. Becoming a monster dubbed Destoroyah, the microbes combine into a single entity who lashes out at everything around her. Junior senses trouble and is informed of the situation by some psychics. Wanting to protect the humans, he rushes in and attacks the growing Destoroyah. Though he's badly wounded, the teenager stalls the monster long enough for evacuation to succeed and actually wins the fight, blasting the adolescent Destoroyah into a power plant. Godzilla Sr. arrives, knowing he's dying and intending to spend his last few hours with his son. But Destoroyah emerges from the plant in her final form. Junior is seemingly killed by her, and an enraged but dying Senior viciously mauls Destoroyah. Destoroyah barely survives the fight in the form of a single, dormant, microbial form. Senior's body breaks down because of the meltdown, and he perishes. While the explosion is contained with military intervention, the radiation spreads out and surely seems to be about to envelop the planet. In a stroke of fate or luck, however, the radiation from his father's death is absorbed by Junior's body. Junior revives, further aging and powering up into a fully grown young adult, the new Godzilla. Having gone through a change that caused immense stress on his body, Junior goes into a deep rest at the bottom of the ocean to recover. 1996. Mothra successfully averted the asteroid and returns to Earth, laying her egg on the mystically hidden infant island. Batra's priestess, the fairy Balvera, returns after wandering the Earth without purpose, wanting to end it and get revenge on what she saw as betrayal. She breaks an ancient seal exposed by human development, and the ancient dragon, Ghidorah, is reawakened. Mothra and her newly hatched larva, Lee, try to fight the monster, but the daughter is nearly killed, and Mothra is mortally wounded. Carrying her baby out to sea to save it, Mothra gives her and the late Batra's energy to the little one and urges her to return to the island before dying of her wounds. the young Mothra Lee cocoons herself on Infant Island to draw in more power from the Mystic Island, emerging as an incredibly powerful adult. She battles, defeats, and halts the threat of the Death Dragon. 1997. Mothra Lee fights a sea monster named Ghidorah as the long-lost Mu Island chain emerges from the sea. After getting a power-up from the mana-charged island, including a high-speed aquatic transformation, she's able to seemingly kill him. But Ghidorah managed to escape before sealing himself away. The underwater battle, however, reawakened Godzilla Junior, and the Monster Prince is all grown up. 1998. A creature, at first mistaken for Godzilla, and later dubbed Zilla, attacks New York City before it's brought down by jets. Its single surviving egg hatches into a friendlier but much stronger offspring, Godzilla Junior, whom befriends humanity after being raised under their watch. He, along with the HEAT Heat Team, have numerous adventures around the world, battling everything from mutations to a dormant alien ship. Back in Asia, the demonic dragon from old, the true Grand King Ghidorah, returns and begins to cause mass devastation to feed off of the death and fear. In a maniacal streak, he creates a dome of dark energy and teleports thousands of children into it to feed off of their life force. Mothra Lee and Godzilla Junior both rise up to confront the threat after bumping into each other with a short scuffle, correctly sense that Ghidorah is their common enemy. The two fight him together, successfully driving him away after a grueling battle, saving the children. Mothra returns to Infant Island to heal as Godzilla chooses the largest of the Mu Islands, Solgal, as his new home, with the agreement he'd keep an eye on the world as Lee tended to herself and the mana stream. 1999. Godzilla Junior pursues a reawakened UFO belonging to the Millennium race across Japan, as the military fires upon him to keep him away after wanting to make first contact with what they thought was a peaceful race. The Millennium UFO backstabs the humans, unleashing a massive EMP that renders the military powerless. Out of options, Commander Aso receives a call by Azusa Gojo. Godzilla Jr. had not stopped chasing the UFO, but was having a hard time getting to it as he was unwilling to trample the military blockade surrounding the city. She tells Aso need not trust her word, but he does need to trust her sons. Commander Aso reluctantly tells all units keeping Godzilla out and firing upon him to pull back, saying, quote, "Point him in the right direction and then get the hell out of his way." It works, and Junior ignores G-Force to engage the UFO and its mutated pilot, the alien monster, Orga. After a ferocious battle, Godzilla is victorious. However, before he can finish Orga off, the monster's main body parts are teleported away by the UFO's remaining escape pod for parts unknown. Humanity is still unsure if Junior is the gentle giant towards them he was in his youth, given his ferocity in battle and the fact he's far exceeded his father in power. Still, the acting head of G-Force, Commander Aso, decides that in the reveal of the Millennium, a race not even the Mysterians were aware of, the biggest threat to humanity is no longer Godzilla. He was further shamed upon discovering the G-cells the UFO accessed to make Orga was being illegally housed in a CCI facility without his notice, meaning the oversight he granted the group caused the catastrophe. He thusly dismantles CCI and renames G-Force into the Global Defense Force, or GDF, and retires after naming Stacker Pentecost his successor. 2000. A tested black hole weapon called Dimension Tide is built, but a test fire causes a dragonfly-like monster called Gaius to enter the world through the black hole. She begins to form her hive in a nearby city, nearly destroying it as the GDF works to contain her. The Dimension Tide prototype was greatly damaged after failing to hit Gaius and deemed irreparable for the next decade. Fortunately, Godzilla Junior comes to humanity's aid and battles Gaius, killing her, but accidentally not noticing her hidden egg. A new Gaius hatches after a long time later, but retreats to parts unknown. Months later, an ancient kaiju awakens from his slumber at the ocean bottom. An alpha predator of the other radioactive kaiju, it chases Zilla Jr. and the Heat Team. Seeking backup, Zilla directs himself to Solgale Island, where Godzilla Jr. arrives on scene to try to figure out what is going on. Having met prior, Zilla and Jr. face the ocean as a titanic beast emerges. It closely resembles a Godzilla, but has darker colored dorsal plates and hailed from the Permian period, meaning it wasn't a dinosaur. Dubbed Gojira the Legendary, the Titan noted its role as a balance to the ecosystems was solely needed in the modern day, but thought to test the two younger kaiju to see if they were up to the task. Godzilla and Zilla managed to fight Gojira off, but the ancient peacefully decided to return to his slumber, knowing Terra was in capable hands. 2001. Spirits of those killed by the Japanese in World War II resurrect and greatly empower the 1954 Godzilla. The monster goes on a vengeful rampage of devastation in Japan. The first civilization prophecy is put into motion, and 3 ancient monsters are revived one by one to defend the world. The first monster, the Earth Guardian Baragon, engages the Ghost Godzilla at a railway to buy time for fleeing citizens to escape. The smaller kaiju barely escapes with his life, but manages to summon the remaining 2 more powerful guardians before going into a coma. The Water Guardian Gamera engages Ghost Godzilla at a bay, and the Fire Guardian Anguirus awakens prematurely to help him. The 2 were barely holding their ground when the modern Godzilla Junior senses something is wrong and arrives sometime later. Quickly figuring the situation out, he attacks the Spectral Kaiju and helps tip the scales in the Guardian's favor. Individually, any of the 3 would have been killed by the haunted monstrosity, but by fighting together, the resurrected abomination is destroyed. Anguirus joins Godzilla on Solgale, while Gamera flies off to an unknown land. 2002. Several ancient bat-like kaiju, the Gaius, awaken on a remote island. Malfunctioning first civilization creations, they were meant to function as protectors and devourers of pollution, but are driven by a rabid, unending hunger due to a faulty design and consume everything in sight, leading them to begin to attack coastal towns. Gamera arrives, killing 2 of them before fighting the largest and strongest in downtown Osaka. The turtle wins, but more Gaius eggs lay scattered across the world, forcing him to go on a globe-trotting crusade to stop the oncoming swarms before they became too large or powerful. Amongst those who hatch is an albino Gaius who's far stronger and faster than others of her kind, as well as the only one of the flock who's sentient like a normal kaiju. Dubbed Hyper Gaius, she and Gamera would battle several times, but after a duel in late 2006, she kept a low profile. 2004. Numerous groups have been hard at work trying to reverse engineer the Oxygen Destroyer, despite Professor Ejuin following in Serizawa's footsteps and destroying his nodes and going into witness protection. Both the GDF and a terrorist cell made of the CCI defectors, the Red Bamboo, come close. However, on the cusp of managing to remake micro-oxygen, history repeats itself. Numerous juvenile Destoroyah burst into existence within a Red Bamboo lab, having spread across it in microbial form via the ventilation system. They spread, propagate, and combine into a restored final form. Destoroyah lives again and utterly destroys the island she was revived on. At the same time, the closed-off GDF facility, trying to do the same thing, also comes under attack by a returned Zanilla. How Zanilla knew to attack that specific GDF base is left unknown. It is assumed the process of trying to make micro-oxygen somehow either drew the fragment of the original Destoroyah in a bid to restore itself, or the process entirely recreated it, with the original joining in after. Either way, all attempts to remake the weapon were abandoned as the Serizawa legacy. Destoroyah roamed the Earth again because of it. One very sobering observation as noticed afterwards though. 1 month later, Zanilla and Destoroyah were seen flying together in the same direction, right next to one another. 2005. A pterosaur-like kaiju, the last of the first civilization guardian beast creations, arises from its entombment on the same island where Godzilla Junior's egg was found in 1993. Due to its close resemblance to the late Radon, it's given the similar name of Rodan. Despite some fears of a brawl ensuing when it arrived on the Mu Islands, the young kaiju quickly befriends and joins Godzilla and Anguirus on the island chain after an initial misunderstanding being an hour-long melee with the group trying to get a hold of the high-speed teenager. Because Anguirus and some of his successors awakened early, numerous other kaiju of similar origin begin to spring up from all over the world, such as Yongari from South Korea, Raiga from the Philippines, Baragon revived from his coma in Russia, and Varan from Australia. Many of the more placid kaiju come to see Godzilla and Mothra as their leaders and corral themselves on the Mu Island chain, which comes to be known as the Monster Islands. 2007. War Day. A conglomerate of alien races, the Vortec, Zillions, Millennium, Simians, and Nebulons, all attack Earth at once, using both their powerful war machines, such as their copied Mechagodzilla, and their extraterrestrial kaiju, such as a captured King Ghidorah, Hedorah, Orga, Gigan, Megalon, and the previously unknown creature called Monster X. Terra's nations rally together and fight the invaders with variable success. Desperate, the Terran forces launch a massive assault on the aliens' central control ship, with all hell breaking loose outside. But the aliens began to gain ground after they released all of their monsters upon the invading armies. The final battle is saved, however, when numerous native kaiju come charging into the war zone to attack the invaders. Gamera, Mothra, King Caesar, Godzilla, Anguirus, Rodan, Gamora, Raiga, Gorosaurus, Manda, Yongari, Baragon, Varan, and numerous other titans all attack the alien forces at once and overwhelm them. The Simians' copy of Mechagodzilla is destroyed, along with a vast majority of the invading fleet, and the remaining alien kaiju are quickly retreating, barely alive with their fleeing ships. Godzilla leaves the similarly harmed Terran kaiju back to the Mu Islands to recover. The conflict is dubbed Final War. 2010. A portal to another dimension is opened between Terra and an alien realm, the Antiverse. Alien conquerors on the other side of the portal send numerous genetically engineered kaiju through the rift to ravage cities as giant attack dogs with the goal of humanity's extermination so they can scour the planet for resources. The first attempted attack was by a kaiju named Trespasser, resulted in the city being ravaged for several hours before fate took another turn. Azursa Gojo, having retired to America, was in the city at the time, stayed behind to help the evacuation, when Trespasser noticed a fleeing ambulance. The now retired biologist bravely drew its attention to herself in her car to lead it into chasing her. Something else knew she was there, and if it already was protective of the humans, he'd never tolerate his mother being threatened. Just before Trespasser could crush Azura after wrecking her car, Godzilla Junior burst out of San Francisco Bay and flew into a rage. The berserk kaiju grabbed Trespasser by the neck and dragged it back into the harbor before viciously mauling it. The fight, if it could be called such, ended when the Monster King wrenched the alien's jaws open despite being clawed repeatedly in the face and fired a nuclear beam down its throat to kill it. The world woke up to news broadcasts the next day, showing Godzilla standing over Trespasser's burned and barely recognizable body. Looking down at the middle-aged biologist as she stood on the remains of the Golden Gate Bridge, Azusa Gojo still saw the same infant she cared for 17 years earlier and calmed the kaiju down. Knowing his mother was going to be alright, Godzilla swam back out to sea. The attack was later referred to as K-Day. 2011. The invaders' incursions, however, only grew in time. The key factor in slowing the attacks was due to the Mu Islands being close to the portal. The Terran kaiju, being highly territorial and knowing a threat when they saw it, frequently attacked by the Antiverse creations as soon as they surfaced. The GDF also bolsters its production now that it has a moment to catch its breath. Seeing no end to the giant monsters and getting their hands on more alien technology to reverse engineer from final wars, mecha engineering has a renaissance. New mechas such as the Kaiju and the Jaegers are built to protect the Pacific Rim, along with the rebuilt G-Force Mechagodzilla and Morgira. 2012. On a stormy day, the GDF recorded something on the Deep Seas camera bordering the Antiverse portal that they almost considered humorous. Godzilla was swimming through the area and happened to find the portal just as an Antiverse kaiju named Multivore was emerging. Not hesitating for a moment, he fired a fully charged nuclear beam and fried Multivore, killing her instantly. Because of her position of being halfway through the portal, the beam continued to go through her and struck the kaiju production factory behind the portal in the Antiverse, causing a chain reaction that made most of it explode. The portal was not closed, but all Antiverse production was severely slowed down. Late 2013. A few dozen kaiju exist across the planet, forming their own factions. For their role in stopping the aliens, the kaiju following Godzilla and Mothra are dubbed Terra Defenders. More malign kaiju come under a loose alliance, under Zanilla, dubbed Mutations, due to the origin of a majority of their ranks. The alien kaiju are assigned under their own faction. The factions have battled it out for years without a clear victor, until Zanilla launched an invasion on the Mu Islands in the dead of night. Late 2013, later that night, the bridge was reopened.